Well, folks, there she goes, leaving Purgatory in the dust. Or leaving the dust of Purgatory. But, so yeah, as you can see, I have made it off of the planet that the Draconis Impossible series server is it's defined by. So I figured I'd like to offer you all a tutorial of the sorts on how to get started on Purgatory, and maybe give you some tips and some tricks on how to survive down there, and maybe how to think about getting off. Anyway, let's get started. When you first connect to the server, you're going to be met by this screen, because the way that the server cluster works is they have a lobby that everyone connects to first. And you'll notice later on as you play, you'll connect here and then be automatically directed to where your character is. So that's something to keep in mind. These servers are all linked to each other, and there's a lot of automatic processes that take place in the background to get you playing where the character is. So to start everything off, you want to click Evacuate and Respawn. And you'll be met with the Draconis Impossible message of the day. Message of the day. Welcome to the Draconis Impossible server. Read the rules and FAQs in the Discord and Wiki. And then there are the links to the Discord and the Wiki. They are very important to know. I highly suggest you familiarize yourself with the Wiki. You don't necessarily have to memorize it, but knowing where to look for things on there, say the rules or guides on how to find ores or how to make sure you don't accidentally lose your ship because it gets deleted, are very important. To anyone who's never played on a server before, they have to be very strict about what you can and cannot have and build out there. It is important for server performance. Otherwise, it's going to be an unplayable experience. The thing that you really need to understand is that the grids will be deleted if they do not follow some of these rules. Now, I say some of these because these rules here are not the same as what is in place when we get down onto the surface. So we'll go over those later on. But the lobby is this damaged ship that you'll be loaded into at first. You can explore it all you want. There are places where, you can play a little bit of parkour. It's really intended just as a holding ground for between here and there. And there is Purgatory, and that's what these places are, these little teleportation pods. Take Purgatory West for an emergency escape pod. Take Purgatory East for an emergency escape pod. And then if you already have things out there, like a survival kit that you want to be able to spawn at, you would take the Swan Dive. These instructions are pretty straightforward. But we're going to pick East, I guess. You sit here and you stand and you spawn in Purgatory East. Now, as I said, it's going to take a while to connect you to the correct server. I'll bring you back when it's at that point. Okay, so the first screen you're going to be met with is this. Do not click anything. If you were to spawn in... There we go. See, if you were to spawn in the Purgatory 122466555, you would be placed into a drop pod, with a survival kit, etc., that puts you in space and drops you to the surface. If you notice, my survival kits, they came into existence afterward. The server is currently set up so that when a new player spawns on to the server for the first time, they will get a new drop pod placed on the surface that does not have a it doesn't have a fall to do. It doesn't fall to the ground. Falling to the ground is potentially hazardous. If you do, however, wish to fall to the ground, you can respawn here. And let's give that a shot. Alright, so, message of the day. We're going to read those later. Because one of the things that you want to be able to see is where you're falling. But it's nighttime. Now, you could play the game of dropping out of this pod, respawning, and getting a new pod falling someplace. If you want to do that, because you want to be able to scout the ground below you, and, you know, see if you can spot any ore veins, you can do that, that's fine. Something else to keep in mind, these drop pods, they have a bit of ice in their O2H2 generator, and they have hydrogen thrusters. Now, you can make this pod move while it's falling, and you can make the pod, land in a certain location if you're close enough to it. Obviously, you have a good amount of distance to get down to the ground, but it's not going to make a huge difference. My suggestion: just wait for your chutes to deploy and land gently. Ah, there we go. Chutes are deployed. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn those lights on so you can see what's going on better. Link interval. Radius all the way out. Alright. Now, as you can see, you're falling pretty fast. 24 meters per second. That's not safe. 300 meters up, if you were to slam into the ground like this, see where it says small signature right there, right underneath where it says respawn pod? That's where your beacon is. Your beacon is inherently important to keeping your pod where it is. So I'm going to get into first person and nose up to try and land on the ground, face, on those landing gear that are there. And we're down. Alright, one of those things you want to do before you even leave the cockpit, and I had to hop back in to remember this, is go to your info tab. Escape Pod Mark IV is a bad thing to have your grid named. You want to name it My First Escape Pod. Or My First Landing. If you leave it at Escape Pod Mark IV, it will get deleted. You have some resources in here. You should spawn with tools. However, it's a known flaw, glitch, that brand new players sometimes won't have tools. If that's the case, backspace. Do you wish to respawn? Yes. You would then respawn at this survival kit. Alright. Now, another few things that you should know about. Notice my ice has gone down. I had 500 something to begin with, now it's at 478. You want to take this out of your O2 generator as soon as you can. And turn your O2 generator off. Because you do not want it using up all that ice. The thing to know about Purgatory, even though it says there's none under the oxygen on the bottom corner, there is oxygen. and you want to put a vent onto one of these ports right away so that you can then depressurize the atmosphere and put it into your tank here. Another thing to note right away is you don't have a... you have the daily needs survival kit going on. So the bars up at the top left of my screen. 26, 20, 98. I'm running low on water and food right now. I have some water and food to start with. And some oxygen tanks. And interestingly, I still have some of these. However, this is after the update that's changed the weaponry, so maybe that'll change soon too. We'll see. But food, water, keep it in your inventory for now. Another thing we have on this map, this server, is the Awe Scrap mod. So we're going to want to get a bit of resources right from the start. Something I recommend: you're not going to have a use for both of these cockpits. One of them gives you a lot of resources that you can refine in your survival kit. So let's pick that one to keep. And check if there's anything in this. Nope. Ah, so that little sign is going to fall off. And it's not true any longer, regardless. You can refill your bottle from the survival kits. Now, I've got some material. I'm going to go in here and deposit it all. But look what happened. My food and water were deposited as well. Keep that in mind. If you ever start running low on food and you're like, I had food in my inventory, it's possibly because when you deposit all ores, ingots, and components, it takes the food with it. Now, survival kit, production. Go to the scrap recycling. Queue up all of these at 1,000 each. And remember, you can hold down Control and Shift to queue up 1,000. Now I've got some materials. Now I want to build a vent. And you notice my hotbar has got some personal settings on it already. That's totally up to you how you have it. If you've been playing Space Engineers long enough to want to play on this server, then you'll be experienced with that. Now, I am going to try and pull what I can, and then set the rest of them to production. So, I'm left at where I cannot withdraw 2 motors. Let's check the production on that. And it's because I don't have enough nickel. The Awe Scrap mod does not give you a 1-to-1 return on what you have it scrap unless you have, and not even when you have a full-sized refinery with yield modules on it. So let's put that down. We can get it started. And then we have to get some nickel. Now obviously you can start digging into the ground. The stone here will refine in the survival kit to give you nickel and iron and silicon. But we also have lots of pieces in here that we're not going to really need. This ore detector, for instance. There's no ore nearby. We know that already. Now, if you wanted to try and turn your survival pod into a rover, maybe you'd want to keep some of those pieces, maybe not. Either way, let's try and get those motor pieces as soon as we can. Alright, here's the idea. Each of these little sections of conveyor has a motor in it. And we have one on the other side that connects everything the same way, so let's take these off. And there we go. we are producing the motors. Alright, we have depressurize on. You've got build vision up, you can just switch to the side to get it off. And look at my oxygen meter. It's filling and emptying, and filling and emptying. And what that is my bottle says 87%. Because I'm actively charging up oxygen, I'm transferring it into the bottle. Back to 100%. And more importantly, I haven't used up that ice that I have. Fairly precious ice. So let's go over the requirements for keeping a grid from despawning or being deleted by the server. One of the key, the very first key important thing is this block right here, the beacon. You want to keep it active and on. And notice it only requires one computer to build above the functional line. That means all you need is a computer. The steel plate just keeps it healthier, keeps it from accidentally getting destroyed if you hit it with your grinder by mistake. But put that on any grid you are making, put it on there first. You might even build like the beacon and then build everything else off of it. So make sure you have a beacon on your grid. The next thing is the number of blocks. Now you can go to your info tab and you see here I've got 219 blocks. Alright, that's way more than enough. You need to have more than 20. So if it says 21 and up, then you're good. The next piece that has to happen is it cannot be named anything that has the word grid in it. So anywhere in there, if it says GRID, it can get deleted. Like, don't even name it my grinding ship, because you might misspell grinding and have GRID and it would get deleted. The other caveat to that, other than the word grid, is Respawn Pod Mark IV, the default name for these ships. You need to change that. Those are the important things to remember about keeping a grid from being deleted. Now, that message you get when you log into the lobby says that it has to have power. That is not as accurate on the Draconis Impossible map, because power can be particularly hard to come by. It is been waived in this regard. You don't need to have the power generation. Your ship doesn't have to be powered in order to keep it from being deleted. Now that we have a vent on our conveyor system and we can refill our oxygen tanks from the atmosphere and not use up that ice, something else that you want to do is use the ice. You have a emergency rations right here. The emergency rations will take your ice and turn it into water. It does it very slowly. See how slowly that ticks up? And it uses a lot of the ice to do so. Notice I'm making 11 pieces of water for, you know, it takes 10 pieces of ice per water. So the ice you land with, that 47 water, will get used up pretty quickly. And look in my inventory here. We've got 18 water left of the 20 I started with. And you need water, which means you need ice. Which means you need to start building your base here. Alternatively, something you can do is support the server. Now, let's get rid of the stone I've gathered. Sorry, I'm doing things a little bit out of order because I'm diving into it, but I wanted to make sure I tell you what I'm doing. So, I've started a mining hole right there to get the stone. But, if you open up your chat and type !support us. SUPPORTUS. So it'll pop up the Steam overlay, and you can follow the directions on how to vote. You'll have to log in through your Steam account, and you can vote to increase the popularity of the server, which increases some ad revenue for them. And that's how the server can stay being maintained. After you've done that, type in !reward. Now, I've just been given 500 credits in my wallet, and you'll notice my inventory bumped up. That's because I was given a 500 ice, 100 uranium ore, and 5 ammo. I think that must have come from the reward, and 1,000 iron ingots, or iron ore. That's great. That's some great stuff. The ice is going to be one of the most valuable things for you right from the get-go. Now that you have the ice situation a little bit better handled and your emergency rations dispenser is working on producing water for you, you want to get to mining. You want to collect stone and get that survival kit, processing it into ingots. So let's do that. Now, once you've collected some stone and you're making yourself some ingots, you're going to have the basis of what you're going with. Something to keep in mind, this gravel that you're collecting here, it's not as useless as you'd think in a survival game. For one, you need it to be able to grow food. Well, you turn it into food. I like to think that you grow the food on the surface of the gravel and then harvest it. Whatever. Either way, it's part of the recipe for making food. But there's also a block in here called the concrete block, and that uses gravel as well. So don't just toss it. Keep it someplace, unless you've got so much of it that it's overflowing and you're not doing anything with it. Either way, you don't want to do your typical just get rid of the garbage thing. So now that you have a few materials pulled in from your stone, you want to build a few things here. You want a few steel plates, so let's put 10 of those. You want an interior plate, a construction component, and 2 computers. So let's grab those and start building this base. Now, it doesn't have to be particularly fancy, but what you might want to start with is a ramp up and a few blocks foundation. And let's go with another ramp there, and we'll put our assembler in that direction so we can access the inventory. And we want to have a wind turbine right up on top of the thing. That's not going to work too well. Let's grab another block here and now put that there. And here's where we needed those computer pieces. We want to put a beacon down right away. And we can, try to protect it a little bit by sticking it underneath here. And the last but not least, we want to get a control panel on there. And that's what we needed that construction component for. So now, we go in here, we change it from static grid, first base. But look, we only have 10 blocks, so we really need to expand out on this. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. No, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So, let's double check if this is going to be sufficient. 21 blocks, does not have grid in the name, and it has a beacon. Okay, now that we have the steel plates needed to get this assembler up and functional, we can talk about how to get it to work for you. Because as you'll notice, that's wind turbines spinning super slow, and the basic assembler needs 280 kilowatts. Wind turbines only producing 12 right now. A storm will make that wind turbine produce far in excess of what you need. However, the storms only last a couple of minutes each, and they're about 15 minutes apart. So you could sit here twiddling your thumbs or mining and getting materials to get it to work for you whenever you wanted to, or do another trick. And that trick is grabbing... I thought I had it on there. Anyway. A rotor. Using a rotor, and you can put it where you want to, but easy enough to put it like this. It's connected to the grid, and it's got a large head on it. Let's grind that large head off, and using build vision, you can add a small head. Now, onto that small head, let's put a battery. Let's put a battery. So, a large battery would take 80 power cells to produce. Small battery, only 20. We can go to our assembler, queue in production for 20 power cells. Check how much we need there. 66 iron, 6.67 silicon, and 13 nickel. We should have those materials. Yeah, we've got enough nickel, we've got enough silicon, and let's grab some of that. We only needed about 200 of it. We're going to be using all of this in the assembler here soon enough anyway, but if we just drop this in now, as soon as a storm starts blowing, this assembler is going to start making those 20 power kits, and we can finish building that battery, and that battery will power the assembler when the storm isn't running. And it's looking like a storm is starting to blow. So let's check that power output. Wind turbine, oh yeah, already up to 450, 470, 480. Yeah, not a problem at all. This basic assembler needed the 280. So it is producing those power cells. Yes, perfect. So there we go. During that first storm, we were able to grab... Right, I'm looking at the wrong spot. Enough power kits to build this battery. Now it just needs to get the construction component and the steel plate. So let's add that to the build planner. Let's put those into production. Steel plates. Didn't need that many, and we need some components. There. Now we only had to wait for one storm. I'm putting a control panel on here for a really important reason. If we go to Info, look at the name, Small Grid. That's a problem. We want this to be something else. Hello world. Okay. Now, it does only have 3 blocks. That's understandable for right now. Having grid in the name would have caused this battery and attachment piece to be broken, to be deleted, which would have deleted the entire thing. Anytime you have a subgrid for any connection point at all, always check the name as soon as you can. Alright, there we go. A tracking beacon. I had a few spare construction components, so I threw on some lights as blocks, but now we have a beacon, a renamed grid, and over 21 blocks. So this subgrid should not trigger any kind of deletion event, which would delete the entire base. We have our assembler up and running and capable of producing while there is no storm. We have the battery that is got, fully recharged in 3 days because the little tiny trickle of input, but it's got, 305 kilowatt hours. Our basic assembler uses 280 kilowatts. It could run for a significant amount of time without storms, but the storms are going to be constantly charging it up, so we're good to go. Our little starter platform base is enough to be able to work off of and build what we want to. Another thing to keep in mind is your food situation is going to be, you're going to have a hard time living off of the food produced by the emergency rations dispenser. So what you're going to want to do is build a food resequencer, food protein resequencer. That will get you water and food at a much more rapid and efficient pace. One last thing before I sign off and send you on your way to survive is that the surroundings here, I'm not seeing any ice caps. There is one way on the server to address that, and it is the moisture evaporator. This block, it only works on large grids. It is very power hungry, but as you'll see, it has upgrade ports. So you could fit power efficient, if you put two of them next to each other, you could fit the power efficiency module on both and it would work. It does produce a trickle of ice while using up power. You're going to have to play around with how you collect power and how you get these things built, but that's how you can get ice, at least enough ice to keep yourself hydrated without having to worry about finding an ice patch. Anyway, folks, I am going to sign off now and say good luck on Purgatory. It is a difficult place to survive. Hopefully, I've taught you something that can keep you from needing to rage quit right off the bat. Hopefully, you enjoy this server as much as I do and are willing to put up with the challenge. I'll see you in the stars, and this is Ryden signing off. Thanks for watching.